gearing up for its 6-month EU presidency at the beginning of next year and has identified security as its mandate, with energy sitting beneath that as one of the policy pillars. But with news this week that the European Commission has launched an investigation into the appropriateness of Poland using EU state aid to partially fund a nuclear facility in the country's north, many are left wondering whether Poland has gone nuclear with its presidency before it's even started. My name is Angela Scoogens. I'm joined in the TVP World Brussels studio by my guest, Bart Szewczyk from the German Marshall Fund. That is a think tank here in Brussels. He is a policy fellow. Hi, Bart.
Hi, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So what do you make of this news? Does it undermine Poland's presidency before it even starts?
No, not at all. I'm not familiar with the details of the particular investigation, but I think what Poland recognizes is the importance of focusing on energy policy and making sure that there's more electricity on the grid available for Poland, for Europe, most importantly, not only for our current usage, but also for things like data centers and all the AI and cloud server related infrastructure that you will need to be at the forefront of technological innovation.
I see, and I mean, Poland isn't alone in pursuing nuclear energy, is it?
Right, exactly. And this is an important component of the overall energy package in Europe. Obviously, different member states will take different positions on the specific issue of whether they want to use nuclear energy or not. But Poland views it as an important part of its approach, and quite rightfully so.
And I think if Russia's invasion of Ukraine has taught us anything, is that perhaps a diversified energy market might be good.
Well, exactly. I mean, obviously, Europe has already diversified its energy sources extensively over the past 2.5 years, much to its credit, and also at a pretty significant cost to the EU member states, to EU citizens. But that was what had to be done because you had to exert pressure on Russia, and obviously hitting at its energy exports was one key way of doing that. But apart from that, this is also part of the overall green transition that Europe has embarked upon. And to what extent nuclear energy will play a key role in that. Poland obviously takes one view, and we'll see how other EU member states approach this particular issue as well.
Poland has identified security as part of its mandate. Is this too ambitious of a goal? I mean, how is it going to get security for the whole of the EU?
No, look, I think it's a very good approach that Poland has taken. Obviously, security is quite all-encompassing.
Yeah.
You have physical, territorial security against outside attack, but you also have economic security and making sure that you improve competitiveness and productivity in Europe and Poland. There, we can speak in greater detail later, but Poland actually has a pretty good story to tell over the past 25 years. You have things like technological security to ensure that the stuff that you develop at home within Europe is robust and resilient to outside attack, but also that things that you might import from abroad also has trustworthy security behind it. And then, you have other issues that will be encompassed within the overall concepts of security. Health security, obviously. We lived through a pretty devastating pandemic only a few years ago, and so this will be also an important issue on the Polish agenda. And look, I mean, obviously, it's a very ambitious and complex agenda. They only have 6 months. They're not going to be able to accomplish everything. But I think they're going to come in with a lot of energy, a lot of ambition, and try to move the ball as much as possible over the next 6 months, and then pass on the baton to the next presidency.
In terms of tangible results, what can they actually achieve? I'm talking about not just motherhood statements, not just them saying, we need more support for Ukraine, we need more defence spending, but what are actual deliverables that you think that they could deliver on?
Well, if you step back a little bit, this is actually a very seasoned, very experienced team. Prime Minister Tusk obviously has served in the role of President of the European Council for 5 years. He knows how to get things done within the EU institutions. The Foreign Minister, Radek Sikorski, was formerly in that role, also knows the EU very well, served as a member of the European Parliament. And then below them, you have a very, very deep bench of very experienced, very energetic decision makers. And so I think they will actually shy away from very high-minded pledges and statements, and will actually focus on actual brass tacks and making sure that resources are allocated to specific projects and missions. There are a few things that they have in the works already. I think the core issue for Europe and for Poland in the near term, over the next 12 months, let's say, will be to ensure that Ukraine is able to continue to defend itself, and to ensure that, to make sure that weapon supplies continue to Ukraine. Now, obviously, a lot of those weapons come from the United States, and so with the new Trump team coming in, there'll be discussions as to exactly what can be supplied, who finances it, and so on and so forth. Other weapons are procured within Europe or from other partners like South Korea. And so I think Poland will make sure that this is on the top of everyone's agenda, as it has been over the past 2.5 years. But they will make sure that everything is executed effectively to make sure that Ukraine can continue to defend itself and to be in a strong position where peace negotiations to come about with Russia. And then you'll have other measures. I wouldn't exclude another round or two of economic sanctions against Russia to keep exerting additional pressure on Russia. And then you might get some specific issues. For instance, there's this ongoing debate over what to do with immobilized Russian assets.
Yes.
200 billion of which sit at Euroclear. And for the past 12, 18 months, Europe and the EU have been focused on using the interest revenue from these assets and to be able to transfer that to Ukraine. I think now that that is sort of behind us and we've pocketed that win, the debate will turn to confiscating all of the assets. And this is something that the Polish presidency has part of its priorities for the next 6 months, and we'll make sure to advance those discussions and advance that work.
And something that I think is quite interesting is that, obviously we had the Hungarian presidency. We know that Viktor Orban has vetoed some measures that, not recently, he actually greenlit this 15th sanction package, which was kind of a surprise for people. But obviously we have the Hungarian presidency very focused on the single market, competitiveness, and Poland comes in. And we know that Poland is big on defence. So it'll be interesting to see the contrast between those two presidencies in terms of what they want and what they deliver, and if Hungary will come to the table again and help get those things across the finish line.
Well, look, I think the Hungarian presidency was sort of a transition presidency. We had elections for the European Parliament, the new team selected for the various leadership positions and so forth. Now that the new European Commission is in office, I think the Polish presidency will make sure to get a number of files started and to like I said, around the overall strategic concept of security, advance both specific policy issues and also the overall public understanding across a number of different fields. On defense in particular, it's an ongoing complex issue, but we have a new European Commissioner for defense industry and space. Commissioner Kubilius, will be particularly important in terms of figuring out how to improve the defense industry in Europe to make sure that Europe and European countries and firms can produce more ammunition, missiles, tanks, planes, etc., to be able to, first of all, defend European member states, but also to provide those weapons to Ukraine and to other partners in the future. So that will be a key component of his mandate, and also trying to figure out what are the rules and regulations in place that might impede some of those developments. What are new rules and regulations they need to put in place to facilitate a very robust defense industry in Europe. And also how to think about, the intersection between defense policy and tech policy to ensure that, Europe and European member states are at the cutting edge of technological innovation that they can then incorporate into their defense capability.
Donald Tusk was in Brussels this week for the European Council, and he made an interesting comment to reporters. He was talking more broadly about Moldova, Georgia, Romania, Russian interference, obviously, in a range of events and issues there. But he highlighted that he was potentially concerned about the presidential election next year in Poland. What do you think is the likelihood of Russia meddling in that election?
I think the likelihood is probably 100%.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe I might be off by 0.5% or 2%, but a pretty high likelihood. And also potentially other actors. I wouldn't exclude China from doing the same, Iran. They have various capabilities, but Russia will be at the forefront of those efforts. Now, I think this is not 2016. This is not going to surprise anyone that Russia will try to meddle in democratic elections. We saw most recently, what they did in Romania and the devastating consequences that such interference can have. But they've by now have done this in the French elections, in the German elections, so in the European elections. So this is par for the course. And I think the polls will be very focused on making sure that those attacks are not successful, that they're either thwarted in the first instance, or to the extent that there is some disinformation and misinformation, that is quickly taken down, clarified, and so forth. And I think the Polish citizenry electorate will be pretty astute not to, accept any Russian propaganda. But obviously, every country has to be prepared for stuff like this.
But, we're talking about them being aware that this could potentially happen. But what can they actually do to prevent? Can they do anything to prevent it happening, or is it just awareness? Or?
No, look, I mean, if you have good cyber defenses, you can spot attacks as they're occurring before they occur. If you, let's say, identify a deep fake or an AI-generated campaign video allegedly on behalf of one candidate, it turns out to be completely fake, you have that taken down. You're able to have technologies to identify these things in the first place. And this is where I think Poland will also be, the Polish government will also be quite important in terms of coordinating with the private sector, with the tech companies that have this expertise, have this capability, to make sure that they utilize the state-of-the-art technology to be able to thwart those attacks. But look, I mean, because it's an open society, because it's a democracy, inevitably stuff gets through, and there is misinformation, disinformation, deep fakes that will be part of the overall landscape. And then I think you have to ultimately rely on your electorate and your citizens really not to buy into stuff that is just completely crazy, and there will be a lot of crazy stuff out there.
Yeah, and I think also trusting executive government that they will do their job. I'm thinking about the European Commission launching an investigation into TikTok this week for potential, for the platform being ripe for exploitation by foreign interference. So I guess we'll need to wait and see and watch those institutions and see if they're doing their job and holding those companies to account.
That's right. And a lot of this stuff has to be done quickly and as the elections are taking place, because, if you, let's say, wait 6 to 12 months afterwards, it might be, the game might be up, and the elections might be already thrown in one direction or the other, and it's a lot more difficult to undo that process. And so it is very important to, first of all, try to ensure that you have the best tech to make sure that this stuff, it doesn't get through your filters, and secondly, to the extent that it does, they can counteract it as quickly as possible. But it's been done before. I remember in the first French elections in 2016, when President Macron won, his campaign was routinely interfered with by the Russians, and it turned out not to be effective. And so I think we should never lose our guard. We are always vulnerable, but I think with Russian tech is not that good. We have better tech on the Western side. And so invest in state-of-the-art technology to thwart these attacks. And then secondly, make sure that you debunked any misinformation that's out there.
Let's wait and see and hope those authorities do debunk that information so Poland gets the right election. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you as well.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. My name is Angela Scoogens. This is TVP World. Stay tuned. We've got more commentary, news and analysis coming up next.